Mystica. Don't be put off by the front cover and the box, which has a dwarf peering over its shoulder with all the smugness of the upper social elites, because what's inside this dense brick of a box is a wonderful game about terraforming and territory expansion and management as you try and gather enough resources to build a great expanse of people, all while hoping everyone stays off of your lands. Get off of my lands! Get off of my lands! Last person to touch a shovel goes first. Now, I know what you might be thinking looking at this board, and, well, everything really. And that it's like completely hideous. If you squint your eyes, everything becomes a sort of indistinguishable mess of sorts. And you're gonna look at me and I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, Chris, are you sure this is fun? Because this just kind of looks more like a melange of blancmange. By which I mean it looks flavourless and boring. But I thought the exact same thing. But if you sit down and get past this horrible mono-textured everything, what you'll find in Terra Mystica is this wonderful, incredible puzzle just waiting to be cracked. So, in Terra Mystica, you're presented with the 7 colours of the rainbow. Or at least the board game rainbow, where at least 3 of the colours are brown, grey and black. But you have 2 unique factions for each colour. Merfolk and fishmen in the blue water tiles, gnomes and dwarves in the grey mountains, and so on and so forth. I'm not a gosh damn wildlife safari. For a large chunk of the game, you'll be looking at this like dial-a-phone of colours essentially, which shows how you terraform other lands into your basic land. So browns and fields for the cultists. You use this to expand your civilization using the power of shovels. And basically, if you're the cultists, as an example, to convert yellows and blacks into brown, it costs 1 shovel. It would then be 2 shovels for a red and blue, and a hefty 3 shovels in order to convert a grey or green all the way around into a brown, which is an incredible amount of resources. What this means though is that before you've even started the game, you have to pay close attention to where you're putting your pieces on the board to try and find this optimum route basically of terraforming, of where you can eventually progress. You don't want to place yourself down in an area surrounded by difficult to terraform lands, but also you don't want to place yourself isolated from everyone. So you're trying to look at these locations that aren't going to get in the way of anyone else, but also at the same time allow you to just plow straight through the world. But how exactly are you going to go about expanding your civilization? Well, players take it in turns around the board, doing 1 action at a time, which can be anything from like placing down or upgrading a building, doing a dig to convert a tile that's adjacent to them, several other bits and pieces, or like there are unique actions which you can only do once a round in these like yellow, orangey hexagons, and they're always fun, but everything that you're going to be doing does require some form of resource, such as worker cubes and money coins. Now you get these resources during the cupping phase, where you scour your board to look for any of these tiny little cupping symbols which tell you how many of a resource you get. So you get like a bunch of workers, you get a bunch of money. Now these are your main limiting factor as to what you can do, because obviously everything costs resources to do. Digging starts out costing 3 workers. That is a ridiculously expensive, incredible cost. So obviously, what do? You put down loads of settlements. Just place them all over the shop and covering all of your little cup markers for workers. Easy peasy. You are now drowning in workers. There's too many workers, but oh no, you don't have any money. What's going to happen there? Well, obviously, then you just upgrade your buildings, place down some trading posts. Trading posts get you money. Oh boy, now you've got all the funds you could ever need. Here's the thing though, when you place down any building, like upgrading building of a higher tier, then the lower tier has to go back on your board. Suddenly, you're not cupping as many workers. Sure, HR are thrilled they're not getting as many complaints, but at the same time, your resources are now very limited again. You're back to having no workers. You've got all the money, but where's all the labour? There is this incredible balancing act that comes from managing your resources, and making sure that you get the cupping benefits as and when you need them. Because sure, you might have the resources now to upgrade all of your trading posts into temples or what have you. That'd be fine. You could do that right here, right now. The issue being that when you get round to the start of the next turn, all your trading posts are on your board, so you no longer get their cupping benefit, so you'll have fewer resources next turn. So it just becomes this incredible thing of trying to make sure that when you finish your go, you've got everything that you want off of your board, so you can then cup their benefits and proceed with your next go. Oh yeah, there are only 6 goes in the entire game. Yep. So frequently you'll get to a point in the game where you look down at your humble civilization and think, yeah, I think I'm about ready to start playing the game. Let's begin. And it turns out you're on round 4. That's over half of the game. Are you even trying? You've only got like 10 points since the start of the game. What are you even doing in this game? But fret not, because what frequently ends up happening is just that. But then in the last few turns, you go from having like 4 or 5 actions maybe, to just a massive swarm of actions as you start putting down just everything on your last few goes, and you go from like a few measly points to just racing around the table and getting like 100 points. It's great. It's a wonderful feeling because you feel like you're just not doing anything, and then you do everything. You'll mainly be earning points through each round's randomized point focus, such as earning points from building settlements on this turn and this turn only, which adds a really interesting dilemma a lot of the times, because, sure, you get points from building your stronghold on turn 4, for example. That's really useful. But at the same time, your stronghold ability might be really useful as well. So you have to ask yourself, do you wait until round 4 to build your stronghold for those extra bits and pieces of points? Or do you think that the potential use of your stronghold ability will ultimately garner you more than 5 points in the long run by building it early? It's an interesting question that you have to ask all the time. Do you want to build dwellings now? Do you want to build dwellings later? You should be really building dwellings all the time, but sometimes you get points later on in the game because of how everything's lined up. It's great. Also, with these unique round focuses, you've also got the elemental benefit. Haha, it's another board to look at. Let me introduce you to the element tracker. Ooh, this is where you keep track of how you are doing on the 4 elements. And you mainly increase your way on these elements by getting your priests, which you earn through temples and the like, and sending them off to do some form of arcane ritual, such as throwing them into a volcano to increase the fire track, drowning them at sea to increase the water track, burying them alive to increase the earth track, and then to increase them on the air track, I guess you just make them stand outside and let the wind just really mess up their hair. Now, a lot of the time, this will seem like just a simple sideboard that you're not really going to pay any attention to for most of the game. That is, until another player puts down a priest somewhere on the board. Oh god, you've got a priest already? How? Oh my god. And suddenly, you begin to realize that the amount of spaces on the priest track are very limited. The very first space gives you 3 in that element, but also there are only 4 spaces per element on that board. You're going to look over at the board and realize that everyone's suddenly been placing down priests, and that hot priest real estate is wearing thin, and any plans you had on sending people into a volcano to die terribly are rapidly running out. You're not going to get much done on that thing. Your power cycling is gonna be naff. Now I know what you're thinking. Chris, you spent far too much time going over each individual particular part of the game, and you've not even touched upon half of it. You've not touched upon end game bonuses. unique powers that you get each turn, boons you get from temples, power just from doing power. And if I did that, we'd be here for years, and that'd be time not spent playing Terra Mystica. Because you see, even though everything feels like there's so many moving parts going on that it might be complex, in actuality, it's a simple puzzle that you can easily wrap your head around, and every single part just naturally falls into place. It is an incredibly easy and simple puzzle that you can just sit down and begin to solve. It sounds like this recommendation is going to be coming from someone, like a lot of board game reviews, where it's coming from someone who's played hundreds of games and has mastered the entire thing, and only once you begin to understand the game can you enjoy the game. No. With Terra Mystica, the moment you sit down to play, you immediately become aware of this wonderful puzzle to crack. It doesn't matter whether you've played for the first time or are playing for the 100th time, there are different layers to this puzzle to solve. When you play your first few games, you'll sit down with a faction, it'll be lovely, it'll be great, and you'll spend most of your time just working out the base puzzle. Just how everything works, how putting a person down gets you more resources so you can put more people down, and just trying to get that finite balance of putting down trading posts and settlements and dwellings and temples so you can play the game, expand, get bigger. And the simplicity of the puzzle makes that fun, because even if you don't necessarily do well, you'll always have some kind of harebrained scheme of sorts going away in your mind. You'll start divvying up resources, putting workers and money, being like, okay, that's a dwelling, and then once I've done that, I've got these resources to make into a settlement, into a trading post even, and then I guess I really need to like build something so I've got enough power. And it's great because you're just trying to work out what to do, really, and that feels wonderful. You'll be playing Terra Mystica, trying out every single faction, trying to get to grips, see what they're all about, see what they're like. So as you play more and more games, you just learn how to play the game. So when you go back to playing a faction that you might have started with, you've learned an awful lot, and suddenly you're playing them very differently. Because, I don't know, you finally realize that upgrading your boats is really, really useful. Hot tip: boats are good. Eventually, a level of madness will overcome you and your friends as you might look at one another and say, what if 4 towns? Or maybe even like, what if turn 1 sanctuary? And it's weird, it's mad. You try and basically set your own goals of sorts, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It is the wonders of Terra Mystica and its diverse puzzle. Each game you can go in and set your own goal of sorts, so you can either try and work out some weird puzzle such as trying to solve a faction or trying to get 4 towns, or just sit down and try and do your very best, create your best score yet, and just master the elements of board games of sorts. And generally, like, trying to solve your own puzzles is great, such as the Giants. They're a weird faction. Literally every single thing costs 2 shovels to convert into the red land that Giants need. That's mad. That's a lot of resources. How are they going to cope at the very start of the game? But what's this under their stronghold spot? Oh, it's a free double shovel every single turn if you unlock that. I wonder what you could do with that, huh? Seems like that might be really useful. Huh? Now, I know I made fun of how the game looks, and I will continue to do so. It is a hideous and ugly thing to behold. But that doesn't mean that, like, the components aren't wonderful. It's just the art design that genuinely, I hate it. You see, the little wooden components, the little tiny bits and pieces, they're so delightful and bitty and weighty at the same time that it makes everything so easily readable. Everything looks unique enough that you can glance at the board. Everything's got its own little levels and everything. It adds that nice 3-dimension to the board that you can just immediately understand what's going on, what is where, who's doing what. It's brilliant. And because of the different shapes and sizes of each piece, their own sort of unique weight, they have that impact, that unique sound, that feel as you place them on the board. Plink, plonk, tink, bosh. I love Terra Mystica. It is a deliciously simple but complicated puzzle that has so much going on, so many different factions involved, that when you get around to sit down and play it, you play a faction you've not played in a while, and it's this wonderful sense of freshness because it's like a different puzzle. It's a different variant on this puzzle you've been trying to crack, and now it's slightly different to crack all over again. There'll always be a faction you actively want to play, and then you play them, but then you're like, oh god, I haven't played like halflings in ages, man. How do I solve halflings? It is wonderful. There's so much going on in this box that's genuinely great. And if you want more Terra Mystica, there's an expansion, Fire and Glace, or Fire and Ice for you and me, which has a picture of a dragon looking over its shoulder on the front of it with all the smugness of the upper social elite. And it's great, it's fine, it's wonderful. It contains like 6 new factions, 2 with their own unique colour, 2 who are sort of colourless and kind of weird and wild in that sense. It's very interesting. All the factions are different and weird in their own way. It also comes with another board that's got 2 sides that is like a slight adaptation on this board, and then like an entirely new arrangements of hexagons. It's wonderful. The issue being it doesn't really work with 2 players. Well, a lot of the factions don't work with 2 players. They all rely on higher player counts to actively kind of function, because they're all reliant on like, if someone's got this thing, then it makes it, if someone's on like yellow and green, then you can't use yellow and green. Well, in 2 players, in theory, the new factions can just sort of be every colour, and it kind of seems unbalanced. And even now, there is another expansion coming out about boats and trade, which I think is called like Ships and Trade, which I assume will have like a boat on the front of it looking over its shoulder with all the smugness of the upper social elite. And it just shows that despite Terra Mystica being 8 million years old, it came out in like 2013 or something like that, it is still getting a lot of support to this day. Also, it is worth mentioning that you've got a game called Gaia Project by the same people. It's basically a re-implementation of Terra Mystica, but now with a sort of sci-fi theme. And to be honest, it somehow looks worse, purely because like it just looks uglier. I will take a pseudo fantasy setting over a boring and kind of dull looking blank spacescape, which is just devoid of colour and any form of personality. But that's just me. Some people prefer Gaia Project. If I had to level one major criticism at Terra Mystica, is that it doesn't really work 2 players. You can play it 2 players, it's just, you're not really jostling for space as much. You just kind of both expand in opposite directions, and therefore you don't really ever feel like you're getting the whole experience. The end game objectives also don't really work, because worst case scenario, you're going to be coming second in all of the end game like longest route objectives. At the same time though, if there was like a smaller map maybe, where you could have this like tight knife fight of a game, that would be wonderful. I would love for that like Terra Mystica compact 2-player version. It'd be glorious. Ultimately, Terra Mystica is absolutely fantastic. I would highly recommend you get it, because it is just a great game about managing resources, expanding out, trying to connect all your buildings together, whilst also desperately wondering if maybe you should use your resources to upgrade your shovels, because, you know, it's really good for expansion, but at the same time you've already put so many resources into shoveling already, it seems a bit redundant to now upgrade your shovels. You should have done that maybe earlier, so maybe you can use those resources elsewhere. That is the game. It's that constant wondering if like there is a better way of using your resources all the time. And genuinely, I love it. I would highly recommend everyone go and buy it. And then maybe, if you're feeling spicy, get the expansion. It's okay. The expansion's fine. It's all right. It's okay. It's a solid okay. Not Terra Mystica though. Terra Mystica is brilliant. Oh, hi there. You've just caught me looking over my shoulder with all the smugness of the upper social elite. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video about Terra Mystica, you should definitely leave a comment, maybe your own thoughts about Terra Mystica and the fun you've had, or whether or not Terra Mystica looks like the game for you. It probably is. It's genuinely really simple and really fun. Touch it, buy it. It's wonderful. But, at the same time, if you look over here, there is a video about the last board game I did, which was Star Realms. It's a wonderful little card game. It's great. Otherwise, I've got a video down here, which is a video game review about Astral Chain, which is a wonderful game on the Nintendo Switch. Check them out. Also, here there is a face orb where you can subscribe on my face. Anyway, thank you and goodbye.